Welcome to this session introducing the certification decision phase under Regulation EU 2017/745. This fourth module is part of a series of videos designed to give you an overview of the certification process under the European Medical Device Regulation. This series is designed to help you gain a better understanding of the regulatory requirements relating to the certification process, provide you with an overview of the certification process, enabling you to identify the various key stages, align your certification projects and go-to-market strategy with the requirements of the regulations and GMED certification process, and finally, to enable you to prepare the submission of your certification projects in the best possible conditions. Understanding and visibility of all stages of the certification process are essential to the success of your certification projects. That's why the GMED team encourages you to take these modules before submitting a project or during your certification process. The certification process under Regulation EU 2017/745 comprises 12 steps divided into 5 different phases. Step 1 involves contacting the notified body, issuing a quotation, and then receiving the order from the manufacturer. Next comes the signing of the certification contract, which takes place before or at the same time as receipt of the manufacturer's formal application for certification. Following receipt of the manufacturer's formal application for certification, the notified body examines the application and either accepts or rejects it. Once the formal application for certification has been accepted, conformity assessment activities can begin. This is followed by the final examination and the certification decision. When certification under Regulation EU 2017/745 is granted, post-certification monitoring and control activities begin and continue until certification is renewed. In this module, we will therefore review the fourth phase of the certification process, which is entitled the decision phase, and corresponds to the stage at which the notified body can take the decision to issue the manufacturer with one or more EU certificates of conformity under Regulation EU 2017/745. The decision phase is an essential stage in issuing the EU conformity certificate. This phase enables the manufacturer, when the output data from the conformity assessment activities carried out are satisfactory, to obtain his EU conformity certificate and place the devices covered by them on the market. The decision phase begins once the final conformity assessment reports have been sent to the manufacturer and concludes with the notification of the decision taken by the notified body. This phase does not correspond to a simple conclusion or closing stage of the conformity assessment activities carried out, but rather to a milestone prior to the issue of the certificate, during which the notified body will ensure that all conditions are met to be able to pronounce favourably in the favour of certification under Regulation EU 2017/745. There are 2 main stages in the decision phase, corresponding to the final exam and decision making. These 2 stages are complementary and essential to the decision making process. In this presentation, we'll take a closer look at each of them to better understand this decisive phase in the certification process. Before reviewing the final review and decision, it is necessary to present the regulatory requirements for the resources involved in the decision phase. This means that the notified body must ensure, demonstrate and guarantee that the resources involved in this phase have sufficient knowledge and experience to be able to make a certification decision. In addition to this authorization, the personnel involved in the decision-making phase must be independent of all the conformity assessment activities carried out. In other words, no one who has participated in the assessment of the technical documentation and/or the audit of the manufacturer's quality management system may be involved in the final examination or decision-making. The persons authorised by the notified body to intervene during the decision phase include various functions such as final auditors and committee leaders. Each function is authorised to intervene with regards to designation codes, i.e. MDA, MDN, MDS and MDT codes, and conformity assessment activities, including assessment of technical documentation and auditing of the manufacturer's quality management system. At the stage of the decision phase, the final examination is designed to enable the notified body to check that all the elements required to make a decision are available and complete, including final conformity assessment reports, responses to non-conformities sent by the manufacturer, and the necessary and expected supporting documents. It also checks that there are no outstanding non-conformities that have not been rectified and which prevent the certificate from being issued. As part of the final examination, the notified body must systematically and compulsorily call on the internal clinician to issue a recommendation for the certification decision on the basis of the manufacturer's clinical assessment report drawn up as part of the technical documentation assessment activity. The in-house clinician involved in this stage must be a medical doctor and also must be independent of the conformity assessment activities carried out. It is also important to note that when the manufacturer's clinical assessment has been carried out by an external product reviewer or clinical expert, the internal clinician involved in the final review must also verify the manufacturer's clinical evaluation by the product reviewer or external clinical expert, then issue a clinical judgment regarding the manufacturer's clinical evaluation carried out. Turning now to the decision making, which constitutes the second stage of the decision phase, it is important to stress that it is during this stage that the notified body will decide whether regulatory requirements have been met, decide whether the post-market surveillance plan, including post-marketing clinical follow-up, is adequate, set deadlines for the evaluation of the updated clinical assessment, i.e. when the clinical assessment drawn up by the manufacturer will be evaluated, decide whether special conditions or provisions need to be defined for certification, such as restricting use of the device to certain types of population, set a certification duration, i.e. the period of validity of the certificate based on the number of parameters, including the new device, device risk class, manufacturer's clinical evaluation, risk analysis conclusions. The certification period defined by the notified body may in no case exceed 5 years. Following this decision, one or more certificates may be issued by the notified body. There are different types of certificate. EU evaluation certificates for technical documentation, EU type examination certificates, EU product verification certificates, EU quality management system certificates, EU quality assurance certificates. The type of certificate issued depends on the conformity assessment procedure applicable to the device and chosen by the manufacturer. When EUDAMED is fully operational, the certificates issued by the notified body will be deposited on the European database for medical devices. It should be noted that the final verification and decision-making stages that make up the decision phase are generally, and as far as possible, carried out simultaneously during a reading committee that brings together final verifiers and reading committee moderators authorised for the designation codes applicable to the device and for the conformity assessment activity concerned. There are two types of reading committee. Audit reading committees, which are responsible for making decisions following an audit of the manufacturer's quality management system. Technical documentation assessment reading committees, responsible for making decisions following assessment of the manufacturer's technical documentation. These two types of reading committee can take place simultaneously or separately. When the audit and technical documentation evaluation reading committees are not held simultaneously, each reading committee gives rise to a decision which is communicated to the manufacturer at the end of the reading committee by notification letter. The first decision is conditional on the decision of the second reading committee. The corresponding certificate is only issued once both types of peer review have been carried out and both decisions have been favourable. We've come to the end of this fourth presentation module dedicated to the decision phase. Important information to remember in connection with this fourth stage of the certification process under Regulation EU 2017/745 is as follows. The decision phase is made up of two stages, final review and decision making. During these two stages, several parties authorised by the notified body and independent of the conformity assessment activities carried out participate in the decision making phase. These include an in-house clinician, a final checker and a peer reviewer. When a certification decision taken by the notified body is favourable to issue of one or more certificates, the duration of certification may not exceed 5 years. This concludes the fourth module presenting the certification process under Regulation EU 2017/745. I hope it will give you a better understanding of the requirements and principles of the certification decision phase. Please contact our sales team or your certification project manager for more information. As indicated in the introduction, this module is part of a series of several videos. You will be informed of their availability as and when they are published. In particular, you'll be able to find information on the following topics: the pre-application phase, the formal certification application phase, the conformity assessment phase, the decision phase, and the post-certification monitoring and control phase. Thank you for your attention and see you soon.